Never fear, Cindersh is here. Today we're dealing with episode 4 of series 9 from Doctor Who. And our specific topic for the series this time is the Bootstrap paradox. This is, what the whole episode is really kind of dealing with is the solution is a bootstrap paradox, and the Doctor is not even able to figure out where the start comes from. He comes up with the idea of creating his hologram ghost because he knows there was a ghost doing these things he creates his hologram ghost to do. But according to him, where did the original ghost come from doing those things? He doesn't believe the original ghost was his hologram ghost, that he didn't create it on his own. He only created it because he had experienced those things, and he created it to experience those things still. But the question is, was he the originator on his own the first time, or was he really dead the first time and he actually changed history? And the question is, the point is, we don't know the answer. That's kind of what the bootstrap paradox does. So it gives you your solution without knowing how you got it. And so the Doctor here at the beginning is going to tell you his story about Beethoven and the time traveler writing out the stuff for Beethoven's material because he has it, but for some reason Beethoven no longer seems to exist. And then he asks this question, so where did this stuff actually come from? We'll start with that.
This is called the Bootstrap paradox. Google it. My question is this: who put those notes and phrases together? Were really composed Beethoven's Fifth.
Of course, one of those things he does not address is the fact that, in his little quote about Beethoven, that maybe Beethoven had existed and something happened to Beethoven. That's a possibility. You look at what the Doctor does in general, and his interacting in history sometimes has the ability to tweak history slightly. And maybe somewhere something else he did caused Beethoven no longer to exist, but his original copy still could have existed of Beethoven's stuff because Beethoven had existed, was supposed to exist, and he maybe somehow needs to correct that in the future. That would be one option for what would happen with the bootstrap paradox, but we don't know. And that's what he tells us, is we don't know. So I've got two other examples I want to put forward of the bootstrap paradox as it is used in Doctor Who. This episode, the last two episodes, whatever you want to call it, are not the first time, will not be the only time this bootstrap paradox is used. Now, I'm sure there's other examples, and I hope you'll comment any of those examples if you remember them. Well, I can think of possibly one or two others, but there were two very obvious examples I wanted to just show a couple clips from. The first one is the Children in Need special, Time Crash, where the 10th Doctor meets the 5th Doctor.
But don't worry, I know exactly how this all works out. Look, venting the thermal buffer, restoring your helmet regulator. Just to finish off, let's try those cyclone crystals. Don't want the TARDIS anywhere. Who told you that? You told me that. You didn't have time to work all that out. Even I couldn't do it. I didn't work it out. I didn't have to. You remembered. Because you will remember. You remembered being me, watching you doing that.
Okay, so in this example, the Doctor was doing something with the TARDIS, and his TARDIS and the Fifth Doctor's TARDIS collided and took up the same space. And so the Fifth Doctor ends up inside his TARDIS. And as you watch the special, the Fifth Doctor roams around trying to understand what's going on, and the 10th Doctor is just kind of lazing around, not doing anything helpful, with the exception of showing him the monitor to show what damage is going to happen from their possible explosion that's going to happen, and rambling on about the way the Doctor looks, the way he's dressed, the way he was the Doctor. And then all of a sudden, you get the spot, the TARDIS chimes start to ring to signal the danger, the real danger, and then the 10th Doctor just, okay, time for me to get going, and he starts doing things as if he's solved what's going on. But of course, he says, as you saw in the clip, I didn't have to figure it out. I saw you do it, and I remembered you doing it. So was there at one point in this event a match where the 10th Doctor was clever enough, he did figure it out? I mean, you would think that has to be the case, is at some point the 10th Doctor did figure it out, or the 5th Doctor figured it out. And then every time after that, the sequence of events for this happening is the 5th Doctor starts, the 10th Doctor remembering what happened with the 5th Doctor, starts doing it, and then every other time that's what happens. He remembers doing it, and so he does it because he remembers seeing himself do it. And that's Bootstrap. That's the Bootstrap paradox. Where did the starting point come from? In the Under the Water, Into the Flood episode, the question is, where did the ghost come from? Here it's, where did this information to undo the TARDISes actually come from? Because as the 5th Doctor says, there's not been enough time for either of us as a Doctor to have figured this out on our own. It just wasn't going to happen in that short time span. Especially when the 10th Doctor is so busy admiring his past self and all that, he's not really trying to do anything. But the first time under panic, they must have tried to figure it out. Had to figure it out in order for this version to have even formed and taken place and begun a loop where 5th Doctor sees what the 10th Doctor does, becomes the 10th Doctor, he does it so that you get my point. That's how the Bootstrap paradox works, is some event outside that doesn't appear in this history had to have happened differently than what we witnessed and what became the history. So the history makes it look like, well, I watched you do it, so I knew how to do it. But where did the information to accomplish this thing happen from? And we find that happens again in the minisodes Space and Time with the 11th Doctor.
Well, we've landed. Emergency materialization should be fine. Should have blocked off the same space available.
So an accident occurred, and now the TARDIS is inside the TARDIS.
Safest spot available. The TARDIS has materialized inside of itself.
Is that supposed to? Take a guess. No. That's the one.
We're stuck.
Inside of the TARDIS is now joined to the outside of the TARDIS, whereas in a
except apparently themselves.
Okay, kids, this is where it gets complicated. I don't understand. Neither do I. But you just said it. No, I'm just repeating it. I'm just remembering what I heard myself saying when I was standing where you are now.
Same things with the 5th and 10th Doctor.
And this. And this. I still don't understand. You still don't.
Okay, well now, you two, stay where you are. What are you doing? I'm setting up a control temple implosion. It's the only way to reset the TARDIS, but unless I find exactly the right lever to control the implosion, we're all gonna die.
You don't know.
So the Doctor starts to work on it, but doesn't know the final bit.
To find out.
And he just waits for himself to tell him.
The wibbly lever! The wibbly lever! Thank you!
So apparently some doctors tried figuring it out, maybe got the wrong ones, eventually got the right one. And so he does the start off work and then waits for the solution to come because he already sees the bootstrap in effect and they are already functioning just because they've heard what was already said. He caught that the first part when Amy comes through and says, I'm just repeating what I heard myself say. So obviously he'd already been through the loop. And he realizes that, and so he knows once he starts doing his bit, I'm going to give myself the last answer. And I said I did remember one other episode where this kind of thing happens, and that is Journey to the Center of the TARDIS with the 11th Doctor and Clara, with the little thing they throw at the beginning and shows up again at the end where they actually realize what needs to happen to stop their loop and all the problems that go on with the zombie versions of themselves chasing them and trying to kill them and all that, and causing that to never happen. So that's another example of the bootstrap paradox that I know you could easily think of in new Doctor Who. Now I can't immediately think of an old Who that's used that, but there's a few examples of it. If you're still confused about what the bootstrap paradox is, you got a couple options. One, comment and see if I can't explain it a little bit better in answering in a comment, or like the Doctor said at the very beginning, this is the bootstrap paradox. Google it. As always, this has been another Doctor Who discussion video. I have been Super Saiyan 7 Cinders. Hope you've enjoyed the content, and we will see you again in the near future.